So I was unschooled. I don't support unschooling, and I've gotten hate from parents who unschool their kids for not supporting it. Here's the thing though, I was unschooled, and you probably weren't. So here's why I don't support it.
According to Robert Maynard Hutchins, the object of education is to prepare the young to educate themselves throughout life. But are schools really doing this? Learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for and attained to with diligence. I also do believe that education brings a long life spark and ignition for learning in our children's life, whether it be a formal classroom education, homeschool, or unschooling. However, when it comes to the topic of unschooling, I would love us to dive a little bit deep on this topic. Unschooling for a couple of months has become a trending sensational topic online, specifically on TikTok. Apparently, a lot of parents has taken up the method of education for their kids more than we can even imagine. In my opinion though, unschooling would be a good fit for you and your kids if you are tired of the soul-crushing, creativity-sucking, cookie-cutter education. If you think your kids are much better playing Fortnite than solving fractions, then yeah, you can go ahead with this concept. But on a more serious note though, unschooling is an educational philosophy that relies on a child's innate curiosity and desire to learn. In families that practice unschooling, students do not attend school and do not follow any set homeschool curriculum. It will be surprising to some that unschooling has dated as far back as the 1970s. Former elementary school teacher and homeschooling advocate John Holt coined the term unschooling to describe the process of kids learning naturally from the world around them. Like free schools, which emerged around the same time but were school-based, unschooling appealed to parents who felt traditional schools were only not just overly restrictive and emphasized conformity over personal growth. So you might be wondering, what does a typical day of an unschooler look like? Well, they don't really have like a typical day, but the unifying characteristics of unschooling is that the children are allowed to direct their own learning. But the practice can differ drastically from one family to another and from one child to another depending on their interest. Some students choose to learn through more traditional pathways such as textbooks and online courses. But unschoolers generally believe that learning is happening all the time and may also consider routine errands to the grocery stores or doctor's appointments part of a child's learning. The whole point is that there is no such thing as a typical day, and therefore the key thing is to simply follow up on the interest of the students. So if your child tells you, "Mom, I want to eat only candy for the rest of today. I want to play games for the rest of today. I want to go to bed by 2 a.m. You have to simply follow up. Some people have said that unschooling is typically just parenting. We will get back to that later, but I want to first differentiate between unschooling and homeschooling. The fundamental difference between unschooling and homeschooling is that in homeschooling, the school is transferred to the house with its elements, hence school curriculum and standardized tests are used and adhered to. While in contrast, unschooling is based on natural learning and there are no subjects or evaluation but just typically life. So unschooling has some principles that they adhere to, and we're going to get into that later. I want to play a clip of some of the parents that are unschooling their kids so that you can hear from the horse's mouth. In this particular video that I am going to play, it is a video of a woman named Mami Onami. I'm sorry if I murdered the name. I am not sure, but I think she was one of the people that orchestrated the whole unschooling thing on TikTok. I think she was one of the pioneers that started it on TikTok. In this video, she was basically trying to say that the whole point of us unschooling is not to pump out kids that are civic-minded members of democracy, which to me, I believe that being such is essential for creating a positive, inclusive, and equitable community. Because tell me, how would these kids fit into the society when they eventually become adults? How are they going to socialize and mingle? Just take a look at this video.
So So the whole interview was about like, you know, the dangers of unschooling, and there was like a homeschooling expert that was like, well, my concern is that they're not going to be civic-minded members of a functioning democracy. First of all, it's dysfunctional, but second of all, that's the whole point, is to not pump out more civic-minded members of a functioning democracy.
The comment section of this particular video that just played was a little bit interesting, and I decided to, read out some of the comments. One person has this to say: delusions of grandeur. And another said, one of my neighbors unschooled their kids, and their 19-year-old son recently asked me to teach him to read and write. Another person commented, I think unschooling can work for genius type kids who can do self-directed work, but that's a very small minority, and I totally agree with this particular person. Then the other said, I have a friend that was unschooled. She despises her parents and no one would hire her, and honestly, I feel bad for her.
Day 2 of unschooling, and we're at the park learning how to have fun. But before you get your panties in a wad, listen. Yes, we're going to be doing reading and writing and math and maybe science, but it's not going to look the same as traditional public school. It's going to be different. There's so many comments in my comment section about, well, what if they want to be a doctor or a lawyer? And I think I've already mentioned this before one time already, but like the likelihood of my kids wanting to do something that they don't see that I'm normalizing is very slim. On top of, I'm very proactive inside of my profession and my career of being an entrepreneur, they're likely going to follow that path because they're going to see how successful. I'm also going to teach them the right way. How many doctors and lawyers and other professions do you see where they're literally in debt, and most of these people are miserable? Most of them. I don't know that I've seen a doctor or a lawyer that's like so happy and, like I said, not in debt. And that's my goal with my kids, is I don't want them to experience being in debt. I'm going to teach them finances and money, and yeah, you do learn that shit in school, but how many of you guys actually utilized it and learned it in a real world way? And so day 2, unschooling, we are going to the library, maybe some thrift stores to find some books just to read. We're going to make it a point in our nighttime routine to read every single night. So read, writing, math, and just doing it in different ways than just sitting down as you normally would in public school. So follow me.
If I am being honest with this woman, she didn't exactly articulate her words well, and I wonder why she wouldn't want her kids to make the choice of a career path, because unschooling typically denies them that opportunity. I feel like to a certain extent she's just being selfish, but I mean, that's my opinion. Well, some other school of thoughts has made it known that unschooling is simply educational neglect, because going to a traditional school will give your kids a well-grounded mindset, and in cases of learning disabilities such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, or language processing disorder, it will be easy to detect, which if unschooling was the case, the parents will simply think that the child isn't interested in letter, graphics, and languages respectively. In addition to this, teachers have a professional license to teach, and during their training, in which patience and empathy are the watchword, and this is so in order to adequately and patiently teach and instill in the kids, which unfortunately not all parents might have. And I also wanted to mention that having your kids go to a traditional school would drastically help in their social connections, which I think is vital for development in kids. In fact, I do have a friend that traveled back to her home country because apparently she was homeschooling her kids in a foreign country because of language barrier. I didn't say unschooling, I said homeschooling. However, her kids found it difficult to attain developmental milestones, and that was the reason for her going back, because she couldn't just fathom her kids not being able to, communicate with other kids. They were just really backwards. Let me play another clip.
Probably one of the great myths about homeschooling, and it becomes a concern for people who are on the edge of thinking about doing it, is this idea of socialization. That somehow, if children don't go to school and spend a lot of time with other children their same age, they're going to miss out and not be developing socially. This is really one of the most ridiculous ideas, but I understand how people get this idea. But it can be rebutted with very easy common sense. Do children improve their social skills by being with other children their same age, or do they improve their social skills by being with people of all various ages, other adults, older children, children the same age, younger children? You see, one of the natural things that children want to do is they want to emulate up and be like older kids, and they want to model and lead younger children. So when you put them in an age-segregated environment where everybody is the same age, the same rank, the same grade, you generally get a sink down to the lowest common level of attitude, behavior, vocabulary. But when you have mixed grade groupings, as is most common in homeschool co-ops and classes and play groups and other things, then children have a superior social environment with people of all ages. And that reflects the real world much more really.
To answer this question, I think children improve their social skills by being able to socialize with children their age. I have a video here of a mom unschooler who had something to say about unschooling, unparenting, and educational neglect.
Unschooling does not permit educational neglect. And yes, I'm familiar with the philosophy and I've read all of John Holt's book. But let's assume this is a genuine question and you don't know how to record keep as an unschooler. Here's an example. You're at home listening to the radio discussing your favorite composer. Suddenly your child gets curious about how music arrives to your radio. So you start talking about electromagnetic waves. This piques your child's interest, so they decide to delve deeper. So you go to the library to check out some books on the history of radio, and then you go to the store to pick up supplies to make your own crystal radio. In that one example, we've already covered music, science, language arts, history, and engineering. Perhaps math too if you made a budget for the project. Now you just put that into your journal or planner, and you've made a record.
Anyways, I wanted us to get into the principles of unschooling briefly. And from what I saw online and researched, unschooling is simply learning happening all the time. Here, the brain never stops working, and it is not possible to divide time up into learning periods versus non-learning periods, just like we do in schools. Everything that goes on around a person, everything they hear, they see, touch, smell, and taste results in learning of some kind. Learning does not require coercion. In fact, learning cannot really be forced against someone's will because coercion feels bad and creates resistance. So if your child decides not to learn anything academic today, you leave them. Also, learning feels good. It is satisfying and intrinsically rewarding. Irrelevant rewards can have unintended side effects that do not support learning, just like we do in a traditional school setting. Learning stops when a person is confused. All learning must build on what is already known. Another one says that learning becomes difficult when a person is convinced that learning is difficult. Unfortunately, most teaching methods assume learning is difficult and the lesson is the one that is really taught to the student. Learning must be meaningful when a person doesn't see the point. When they don't know how the information relates or is useful in the real world, then the learning is superficial and temporary, not real learning. Just, the way we solve mathematics equation in a traditional school setting. That's what they're trying to say. Also, they mentioned that learning is often incidental. This means that we learn while engaged in activities that we enjoy for our own sake, and the learning happens as a sort of side benefit. Also, it was mentioned that learning is often a social activity, not something that happens in isolation from others. But a typical school setting, learning doesn't happen in isolation from others. But anyways, let's continue. We learn from other people who have the skills and knowledge we are interested in and who let us learn from them in variety of ways. It is also stated that in this type of unschooling, we do not have to be tested to find out what we have learned, just like students are being tested in traditional school setting. The learning will be demonstrated as we use new skills and talk knowledgeably about a topic. Feelings and intellect are not in opposition and not even separate things. All learnings must involve emotions as well as intellect. Learning requires a sense of safety. Fear blocks learning. Shame and embarrassment, stress and anxiety, these are things or emotions that block learning. So these are the things that I saw online, and I really do understand the concept of unschooling, but what I don't understand is why it cannot be placed concurrently towards a traditional school learning. Anyways, now that we have understood it, I'm going to play some clips of people that were unschooled and their experience so far in life. I feel like hearing from them will make a lot more sense.
Growing up, my parents didn't make me go to school or learn any particular academic subjects, and that is called unschooling. And to a lot of you, that probably seems pretty radical in and of itself. So what really do I mean when I say radical unschooling? Hi, my name is Skylar. I'm a grown radical lifelong unschooler, and I spent my whole entire childhood learning about or not learning about whatever I wanted and whatever I was interested in. But today I wanted to share with you 5 ways that radical philosophy of self-determination went beyond my education and into my whole entire life as a young person. But I also wanted to share with you 5 ways in which my parents did have rules that, by some unschooling standards today, would be seen as restrictive and make some people say, but you're not a radical unschooler because your parents made you blank. But first, here are 5 examples from my childhood about ways that my self-determination went far beyond the academic sphere. Number 1, I never had a bedtime. I did have a kind of time that I went to bed, but it was self-determined. There wasn't a specific time of night where I had to go to bed. I never had a bedtime. 2, I got a say in what I wanted to eat. My parents took into account what I wanted when they did meal planning, and I wasn't forced to eat things that I didn't like or didn't want to eat. 3, I was never made to stay in an activity if I didn't like it or didn't want to do it. I could try out a new activity, and if I didn't like it, I could just say, hey, Mom, I don't actually really want to do this anymore. And she'd be like, why don't you want to do it anymore? And I'd be like, here are my reasons. And she'd be like, rad. 4, as a teenager, I never had a curfew. There was never a specific time that I had to text my mom or be back. I would just communicate to her about where I was going, what I was doing, and who I was doing it with, and as long as we were in communication, great. 5, I got my own laptop when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I had absolutely no screen time limits with it. I could be on my laptop all day, every day, and there were many days that I absolutely was. If that sounds radical to you, hi, welcome to my page. Here are 5 rules I did have growing up that some unschoolers would say violate the autonomy of children and disqualify me from saying that I'm a radical lifelong unschooler. Number 1, before I got my own laptop, I did have screen time limits, 15 minutes a day until I was a certain age, and then it went up to 30 minutes a day. But keep in mind, this was before the internet was like a powerful tool for learning. It was dial-up, there wasn't a lot online, I'm older than I look. 2, I did not have unfettered access to things like candy and ice cream growing up. Even though we did keep those things in the house, they were restricted for me. I could not make my own decisions about how much candy I wanted to eat, for example. On Halloween, I was allowed to eat as much candy as I wanted, and then I could have 1 candy a day from Halloween to Thanksgiving. 3, I had household chores growing up, and I was expected to do those whether or not I wanted to, because we all wanted to live in a house that was, not disgusting, and I was considered a member of the household family, so I was not given an allowance for doing those chores. And yes, I was very much expected to do them, even on days where I did not feel like it. My chores were things like unloading the dishwasher, sweeping the floors, vacuuming, light stuff like that. 4, I was expected to brush my teeth every day no matter what, and yes, that is controversial in some unschooling circles. Some radical unschoolers feel that it's a violation of the young person's autonomy to tell them how to live their life and what to do with their body, especially for people who still have their baby teeth. Like, if they have a cavity, it's a baby tooth, so great. I'm not saying I agree with that, but that is the perspective of some unschoolers, that I was expected to brush my teeth every damn day. 5, even though I begged to, I was not allowed to play with Nerf weapons. Anything in my house that went bang bang, including taking your hand like this and going bang bang, was a big no-no. My mom was very much of the opinion that guns are not toys and they should not be trivialized, so even though I really wanted to play with a certain type of toy, I was not allowed to. A lot of unschoolers would say that that's really limiting a young person's capacity to self-determine what they want to do and what they might be interested in. Who knows, maybe I was going to grow up to be an amazing Marx person, and I never got that opportunity because my mom wouldn't let me play with Nerf weapons. I don't actually think that I was going to grow up to be an amazing Marx person if my mom would have let me play with Nerf, but I'm just trying to paint a picture of why some people who are in the radical unschooling community would say it's wrong to limit a young person's ability to play with a certain type of toy. Semantics and dogma within the unschooling community are an interesting topic, and I believe that every family can, does, and should modify the core tenets of unschooling to fit what matches their family, their values, and their children. So what do you think? Does it sound radical to you? I don't know.
I first of all want to say that kids who do not have a consistent bedtime will become more chaotic than ever. I do not think kids have the mental capacity to make some important decisions of their own, which in this case is having no bedtime. simply sleeping at 2 a.m. or 12 a.m. in the morning, I find it very wrong and absolutely absurd. But hey, like I will always say, that is my own opinion. Also, she mentioned something about having no screen time, and I don't know if I am old school, but to be honest, laptops and phones can be very addicting even for adults. I mean, for adults like us. So I'm wondering how these little kids are going to be able to contain and not abuse their screen time, since, I mean, it's all part of the unschooling brouhaha. Sounds almost impossible to me though.
So I was unschooled. I don't support unschooling, and I've gotten hate from parents who unschool their kids for not supporting it. Here's the thing though, I was unschooled, and you probably weren't. So here's why I don't support it. As a kid, I spent my childhood learning to play chess, circuit boards, knit, fun stuff like that. But I didn't want to learn to read, and I didn't want to learn to do math because that was boring. So in the rules of the philosophy, my mom didn't make me. So by the time I hit middle school, all the other kids were making fun of me for not knowing how to read. My mom signed me up for a junior high literature class in my homeschool group, and I didn't know how to do anything. To prepare for the class, I had to teach myself how to read because my mom wouldn't. I did this by watching YouTube videos and figuring out that they were saying the name of the video in the video and then figuring out what the words were. For high school, I decided to go to public school because I was not getting the education I deserved. And guess what? I immediately started failing. I didn't have the years of prior education building me up to prepare me for the level of work I had. I was kicked out before I got to graduate. Part 2 to my unschooling video. I'd like to say I understand why people unschool. I understand the passion they have for children and letting children be children. But here's the thing. Is a fun childhood really worth the expense of a quality adult life? Because childhood is only a small fraction of your life, while your adulthood is a huge fraction of it. What happens if your kid wants to become something like a doctor, but has a million missing gaps and can't keep up in school because they didn't learn tons of little bits of crucial information or critical thinking that school provides? Early education is really, really important. If you don't learn basic math as a child, you can't learn it later on in life. Your brain doesn't develop the way every other kid's brain developed because they learned it so early. I'm speaking from experience and witnessing the kids around me in my homeschool groups grow up and not do very well in college or have to get their GEDs like me because a mommy-made diploma doesn't cut it when it comes to going to college.
So I'm an unschooling victim. Yeah, strap in real quick. Here's a funny thing about me, right? I have a legitimate fake high school diploma from the state that I was born in. I received it from a family member in my early 20s. They went and they got it for me in hopes that it would help me, like, get a better job. Here's the kicker. I was pre-accepted into a university. High acceptance rate? Yes. However, I was pre-accepted. We come to find out that diploma has no transcriptions attached to it because I never stepped foot in any kind of schooling facility at all. So it's a legitimate fake ID diploma. There's no transcriptions attached. No school listed. That's so crazy!
Anyways, I do believe that there are some concepts of unschooling that are really nice and others that I do not support. However, if they can be integrated into the normal educational curriculum, I'm talking about the concept of unschooling that really makes sense, I believe it's going to be so much more better instead of just unschooling as a whole. But that is my opinion, like I would always say. Anyways, that is the end of today's video. We have come to the end of today's video. Please do leave your comments in the comment section down below. If you have anything to say, be nice, be respectful. I'd really appreciate it if you like, share, comment, and just say your mind. My name is Sandra, and I will always see you in my next video. Bye.